You know, it's just in each 5 years there's new software to make the number crunching a little more smarter and a little more everything. But you don't touch anything, you don't feel anything. You know, one of the great things about real estate development, I'm sorry if I'm digressing, but I get on the soapbox sometimes and all kind of come out of me. A number of years ago, my wife and I were driving, don't even guess where we were in Weston, Broward, in the Miramar area. And I said to my wife, you know, I said, I think I built a bunch of houses around here somewhere. She said, you did? I said, yeah, I know. Because I built so many communities and so many projects, I don't even remember them. I don't even remember their names. And not only here in Florida, but all over the country. And so she said, what was the name of it? I don't know, I don't remember. So anyway, we're driving, and sure enough, here's an entrance to a little community called Franklin Farms. I said, that's it, it's Franklin Farms. I said, in fact, what we did was, we were looking for some distinctive architecture, so we decided to have an architectural veneer and elevation to look like a farmhouse. We put the first front porches on houses in South Florida back in the early 80s. And so we built these houses that all look like a Texas ranch house or something. We call the Franklin Farms. Now, we bought sand because it was all man-made land, as you know, as we do that here in South Florida. We make the land and we have a lake, and so there's not a blade of grass or anything. So we came in there, I think we built about 160 houses. So we're driving down the street, and now there's these big canopy oak trees, and there's, you know, there's kids playing basketball, and the guy watching his car. And my wife says to me, you know what? Look at the impact you had on all these people's lives. I said, what do you mean? I said, if you didn't build these houses, they wouldn't be living here. These families wouldn't be here. I said, but I just ran the company. I didn't, no, but it didn't make any difference. You were the driving person. And it dawned on me that what real estate allows you to do, if you're a developer, you leave your fingerprints and your footprint on this long after you're gone. How many people get born, work and die, leave any kind of fingerprint or any kind of footprint? You do. You do. Now, it doesn't last forever because nothing lasts forever. But the point is, after you're gone, whatever you built is still going to be there. It's still going to serve man. It's still going to have a social, economic purpose, and so forth. So, I always, when things got bad, and I thought I was, you know, things couldn't get any worse. I would think of that and say, hang in there, because, you know, this will turn out to be something you're going to be proud you left behind. Getting back to housing. Only 2 hands went up, and I asked how many people own a house. Well, I'm looking around the room here, and I'm not even going to try to embarrass anybody, but you're all relatively, well, you're young compared to me, but you're all young people. You're probably mostly millennials, or Gen Ys, whatever you want to call it. And you have all the problems we've read about. You know, you don't have big down payments. You probably have, now for sure you got student debt if you borrowed your money to go to this thing. So you don't look good on a credit report. And what are the banks doing? Lying through their teeth, promising the government that they're loosening credit, and they're not. They're not. The underwriting desk of the mortgage department has got the sharpest pencil ever. And the FHA and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mac are now buying mortgages again, but even those are very narrowly structured, have bad dollar limitations on them, and so forth. So it's hard for you people to buy a house if you wanted to buy a house, unless your father and mother says, here's $25,000, here's your down payment, or something like that. And if they have that money, they probably need it because they now realize they're living longer than they ever planned for. So they need the money. I mean, it's just where it is. So, the paradigm of the home building industry for all those years was the first level of housing was first-time homebuyers, who then grew into their house and grew out of it, then went up and moved up, to the next house, moved up to the next house, and then retired and went over here to a retirement community or something. So there was a process. And each one of these processes required a different house style, space, and so forth. In order for this guy to move up to there, he has to have somebody to buy this house. Otherwise, he's stuck there. In order for this guy to move up to this guy, he's got to get somebody to buy the house down here and the house down here. So what's happening is, there's nobody buying down here. The first-time home buyer is not in existence today, or anywhere near what this machinery needs. So what are you guys doing? Because you have no choice. You're renting, obviously, or you may be one of the 4 people living in a living room somewhere. Because I try to do the math in my mind, and I said, wait a minute. We're going up 3 million people a year in and year out. Where the hell are they all living? You know, there should be an explosion of demand. Where is it? It's not there because it's being squeezed and pressured into a different lifestyle. And some people optimistically say, but just think when that explodes. I hope so. But what's going to make it explode? Are these people all of a sudden going to get a 50% raise? Are they all of a sudden going to inherit a down payment? I mean, what's going to be the tipping point? So what's happening with this is people are going, the hell with it. I'm not going to do that. My parents did that. My grandparents did that. I was in a focus group. You know what focus groups are? I was behind the wall. A builder invited me to sit in on a focus group he was running. And they had people your age. And the purpose of the focus group was to say, who are these young people and what are they looking for? And one young man really impressed me because he said, look, my father got in his car every day, still does, drives an hour and 15 minutes to work, maybe an hour and a half, comes home at night, doesn't get home till 7 o'clock, 7:30. We hardly ever eat together. Saturday is a madhouse of running around to stores and Home Depot and whatever else, and so maybe we have Sunday together. All so that I and my brother and sister can live in this place that's boring. He says, there's nothing for us to do out in the suburbs. I don't want to repeat that. If I get married or I don't get married and I have kids with a marriage or without a marriage, I want my children to be exposed to a lot of urban things and cultural things, and I want to be able to walk to 5 restaurants, and I want to be able to maybe commute for 10 minutes and everything. I don't want that house. And I just showed you that to make the numbers work, we have to do 75% of new housing out in the suburbs. The dots aren't lining up. If all you guys stay in the urban center, where are we going to put you? So what we're going to do, by the way, there is an answer here, pardon me anyway. We're going to go out in the suburbs and we're going to build urban places. Our new land plans for future communities now have, we call it suburban urban. We're building 10-story buildings in the middle for planning, 10, 20-story buildings with jobs, offices, restaurants, I mean, pizza places, dry cleaners. We're putting them right in the middle of the communities out in sticks. And we're making things, walkability is a big thing. Sustainability is a big thing. The people that are alive and well in our industry today believe in those things. The people, the builders who sat back and said, I'm just going to sit and wait till we go back to where it was. I'm going to take the housing plans out off the shelf, put them down. I'm going to say, we're going to build this again. We built it 10 years ago. They're not in business anymore. If they are, they're irrelevant. They're irrelevant. They're smaller and smaller and smaller. The new builders, the new developers are very savvy. But they also know that they just can't run out and build houses that nobody's prepared to buy right now. We've run out of all cash buyers, which flooded the markets for 3 or 4 years. That number is going down dramatically. There was just so much of that low-hanging fruit. The countries where they came from are all in trouble now. And the euro crashing like it is doesn't make our real estate that attractive to a lot of Europeans. Because all of a sudden, we're going to almost be a parity with the dollar. Because remember, 3 years ago, I mean, I met a French guy one time I don't know, was at some party in some house down there. And he was from France, but he said, I just bought 3 apartments. This was about 3 or 4 years ago. I said, and we weren't sure whether or not the apartments were going to come back at that time. I said, you bought 3 apartments? He said, yes, it cost me $750,000 for 3 apartments. He says, in Paris, for $750,000, I get 1 bedroom, 1 bath, about 800 square feet. He says, here I've got 3 2,000 square foot apartments. He said, I couldn't go wrong. He believed it. Well, obviously thousands like him followed. But we're running out of those buyers. Because first of all, the euro is getting close to parity, and also Germany's economy, I mean Italy's economy, France's economy, they're all in the tank. I mean, Japan is upside down. They have deflation, which is the worst thing that can ever happen, and all these things. So those buyers are not there. So who's buying all these houses now? Well, it's still affluent Americans that have a lot of cash. They make money in the stock market, selling the stock, and they're buying houses out right now, out in Parkland for $700,000 cash, or 50% financing. But there's only I think there's about 3,000 houses left to be built in Northwest Broward County, and they're all $500,000 or more. So that's not satisfying society's needs at all. I mean, thank God, God bless you and everything else, but what are we going to do about us? What are we going to do about you and your careers, and where are you going to work and how are you going to work? And I'm not saying you have to be in residential, I'm just telling you that these things are affected by other things. In other words, if you're an office tower builder, which, you know, are got to be filled by new jobs, you know, are those jobs to fill your office building going to take place? And housing demand is driven usually by jobs. And there's a bunch of us who don't believe the numbers anyway the government's putting out today. The 5.5% unemployment is a joke. The point is that we have more people in America unengaged in work than in the last 60 years. We have 25 million Americans that have given up. They're not counted in the unemployment numbers because they're not trying to find a job. So they don't count. Well, you know, and then behind the 270,000 new jobs that they released the other day, 40,000 were part-time jobs. And the part-time job people work for 6 months, leave, go out of the market, and come back in again as a part-time job person. So those people recycle themselves in the number about once or twice every year. So that's what I talk about. Be careful what numbers you're reading. We need jobs in this country. We need, I don't want to get political here, but we need political leaders that have the courage of those old developers that are willing to take real risks in life. And so in the future, know your market. Market research is more important than ever. Who are the people who are going to, if things stay the way they are and everything, obviously apartments are going to do well for many years to come. Many years to come. I've told previous classes, people like you that have asked me, if you were my age and you were coming into the real estate industry, what would you do? What sector would you go into? I said the easy answer for me, because it's almost bulletproof answer, is either go into redevelopment anywhere in the country. It's going to get better and better. Or anything at all that has to do with health and wellness. Anything that has to do with health and wellness. Whether it's a hospital, whether it's an assisted living facility, whether it's a doctor's office building, whether it's a laboratory, I don't care. That real estate is going to get better and better, because that number of boomers and everything, and the number of people who are going to need assistance medically is going to grow and grow and grow for the next 20, 30, 40 years in this country. That's where we're going to have to build. And if you can find a way to build a 1,400 square foot house somewhere, attached, never going to be single family, and it will, but not many, and you can sell that for $199,000, you're going to sell a lot of houses. You're going to be the Bill Levitt of your time. How do we get there? Well, I think a lot of people who bought land in this new cycle are going to get hurt all over again. See, the people who bought land in 2003, 4, 5, and 6 got killed. Killed. The builders themselves wrote off hundreds of millions of dollars of land because they overpaid. Not only they overpaid, they had too much. So the Lennars of the world, the big public home builders, looked at their balance sheets, and it was pretty nice for them. Look at this, they said. I'm making numbers up. We've got $2 billion on our balance sheet in land, or land partnerships, or off balance sheet, whatever you call it. $1 billion of it's not worth a dime. We're not, I mean, it's so far out. I mean, what were we thinking? Well, you weren't thinking. You thought everything was going to go on forever like everybody else did. So they said, let's get rid of all the outlying land. If you're more than a half-hour drive to jobs, let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of anything that we have to put more infrastructure in. So they started writing off all this land and literally handing the deeds back to people, wherever they were. And guess what they were allowed to do? They were allowed to write that off against new earnings. They got it all back through tax credits. I mean, everybody said, oh my God, Lennar's going to die. What do you mean? They had no tax bill for the next 4 years. So it wasn't totally painful, but the point is they bought too much land. So it's okay. 2009, 2010, places like South Florida and Southern California and San Francisco, Texas, things are really getting hot again in residential. So what did all the investors do? Because they have all that cash that you heard this morning just sitting there. I mean, you heard it this morning. The banks are charging for deposits. Charging. I mean, Apple had it was Apple? I think Apple or Facebook the other day paid 0.5% to deposit like $2 billion in the bank for a very short period of time. Because the banks, under the new regulations, can't carry all that cash. They don't know what to do with it. It's a burden for them. So that's how much available capital there is in the world. And so that kind of capital makes a lot of stupid mistakes. And they start rationalizing back to cap rates and everything. But anyway, on land, so we started buying back all these bad land things that everybody walked away from. Oh, it's going to come back. These subdivisions out here, you know, 25 miles, 30 miles from the Pacific Ocean in eastern LA County, hey, this is all going to come back. So I know a lot of the private equity guys that did this. They bought hundreds of millions of dollars of old land, thinking that the whole housing industry was going to come back and recycle. And they were looking in the rearview mirror. And so what do you think is happening right now? They're all trying to figure out how to get rid of the land. I get phone calls. Come and help us take a look at this. How would you strategize what we're going to do with this land? Look, I'll come. I mean, I love making money, but I can almost tell you the answer on the phone right now. You're not going to build houses on that land for quite a while. So your meter's running on your investment, and your IRR is going into the tank. And so we're in that cycle. And now, If you could find land in Broward County, that's totally different. That's totally different, because there is none. And places like that, places like South Florida, which has land constraints, we have the Everglades and the ocean, land values here hold up pretty good. But the problem with that is, they're so high in invested dollars, the builder can't afford to buy them to build a $199,000 house, which is all the market can pay for. So it's in this vicious cycle. Who's going to give in first and who's going to crash first? Because eventually, some smart person is going to come along and say, I figured a way how to build that $199,000 house. That person's out there somewhere. I mean, it's another Steve Jobs. It's another, somebody says, I don't accept what you tell me is the limitations. It's like the Intel chip that was predicted to double in capacity every 18 months to 20 years. The guy was right on the money. Everybody thought he was crazy. What do you mean? Compound this every 18 months for the next 20 years? Do you realize how much data that chip would have to hold? Yeah. But that guy had the vision to see that. So we're looking for those people. But anyway, that's about my summation of where things are and how we got to where we are and everything. I hope it was kind of convoluted, I guess, but the point is, I hope you learned something from it. You got any questions?
Yeah, the concept of the urban-suburban kind of thing where, hey, all the urban areas are taken up, let's make a new one somewhere. It seems like I've seen them go up in western Phoenix. Mm-hmm. There was one big one right up in the foothills of a mountain, and
the town is called Buckeye.
Yeah, it was in Buckeye. They reclassified it Verado. That was the name of their development. And the taxes.
Are you talking about Verado?
Verado, yeah.
Yeah, big mistake in design, but go ahead.
Well, yeah. But the tax base subsidized the grocery store there, some of the other stores. There was some office space. But it seems like you need definitely need a critical mass of population that commits to being out there to make any of those businesses viable. If we're not building a bunch of single-family houses, I mean, okay. So
no, you're right on. You're right on. Maybe let me pick it up.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, please take it.
You're right. There's a pecking order. In other words, Costco has, I'm not picking on Costco, but I'll use them as a great example. Costco says, when we find a site of land, we need to draw a 10-mile circle, and we need X thousands of household people in that circle, home rooftops. Otherwise, we don't build a store. Same concept. The developer says, I need certain kinds of retail that needs certain number of rooftops. So who comes first? Who's going to make the sacrifice? Well, I'm going to tell you who it is eventually. Because when I was building big master plan communities, we built it at a loss. We built like 10,000 square foot grocery stores, brought in operators, and we subsidized those operations until there were enough rooftops. Because that helped us and our builders sell rooftops. So it was built into my financial plan of the whole community that I was going to take a licking on some of those commercial buildings for a number of years.
So you have to have the long view in order to make it justified.
And back to, I convinced that capital market guy who's looking for a 5-year return or a 3-year return of maybe 2 times as money, 3 times as money, or an IRR of 18% or something. Can I convince him to have a long-term view of capital like this? Hard. They're coming around. Some of the big private equity firms have now opened up their long-term thinking. They've gotten away from the IRR. They're now looking more at multiples. In other words, if I can double my money, 2x my money in 4 years, or 3x my money in 6 or 7 years, I don't care how the IRR comes out. That gives the investor a lot of flexibility that you don't have with an IRR. So the problem with Verada, because I have to be very familiar with it, they built the concept right, but they took it out of view of Interstate 10. You can't see it. It's one thing to say, I'm going to build these supporting facilities inside my planned community, but you got to be able to see it from the highway, because you got to have people come off the highway and use those stores and restaurants also, not just the people that live in the community. It's like when you drive down I-75 and you're riding alongside Weston, you see the backs of the names of all the restaurants and all the stores. Imagine if those were all on the other side of Weston, near the Everglades. Half the world would never know they were there. Celebration, which was built by Disney, did the same exact thing. They built the Celebration Town Center. It was totally off of Highway 92 outside of Disney World. You couldn't see it. Just had a big Disney sign up, but that was it. Disney lost $250 million on that project. Back when $250 million was $250 million. Any other question?
How do you think the change in design of new homes affects, because you've talked about baby boomers and the Y generation, X generation, whatever you call, and I've seen what they call the next gen homes. Lennar has that, for instance,
Yeah.
which is 2 dwelling units within one area.
You want to know what I think of that? Or where that
No,
fits?
I've seen that they, the ones I've seen, they sell very fast for different reasons. South Florida is not a typical market, but the concept would solve or help solve the 2 things you were mainly talking about. The generation not being able to afford a new home and having the parents or somebody else, sublet or rent the half of the unit, because the 2 units function as one. But as separate units, you can separate them individually. Have kitchen and everything separated.
Right.
Also helps baby boomers issue that they can just downsize or whatever and have their kids or the next gen kid or whatever live next door with their family. I've seen them go very fast for Lennar, like wherever they come up with that idea, they're the first ones that sell. And I don't know if the location also is a fact, because they started this in California, Texas, and Florida. So the big, I would say, Latin or Spanish influence with the culture, it's might add up to that factor. But I think it's a little bit of everything. Have you seen everybody else doing it?
Oh, sure.
Successfully?
Yeah. It's a great subject. It's a great question. We're talking about multi-generational housing, which has become now a permanent architectural statement. And it's driven by several things. It's driven by what she's pointed out, is the fact that the different generations that come in to live under one roof individually can't afford a house themselves. But collectively, by each group contributing to the multi-generational cost of that house, 1 and 1 equals 3, kind of a situation. Now, it really started in LA in a big way with the Orientals, Chinese and Koreans and people from Vietnam and all that. They're big believers in big family houses. So they started demanding 6, 7, and 8 bedroom houses in California. The family collectively puts all their money together, and they very comfortably, culturally, live in one house. It is extremely common in California. That opened up the thinking of, well, if the Asians can do that, why can't we do that with other generations? Why does it be limited to that? Let me take you back real quick to one of the things I started my conversation with today, when I told you that before World War II, 65% of all the people in America rented. I should have said further, they rented multi-generational housing. I'm 3rd generation Italian American. I was the first generation of my family that actually had their own house, that had their own house. My whole family, when my grandparents got off the boat and got to America, it was very common for them to live with their brothers and their sisters, have kids, and that was the face of America. It wasn't just Italian Americans, but that went on for generations before that. We got away from that with the American dream. But isn't it interesting how we're circling back because of economic reasons and other things? The problem I have with it is, can you live with your relatives? I mean, I have friends my age or a little younger, a little older, that have 35-year-old kids and 30-year-old kids that are moving back home because life pushes them to do that. You think my friends are happy with that?
No.
Yeah, I don't think the kid moving, not the kid, but the adult moving back is happy with it either. You know, we call these, statistically, we call these boomerang children. You know what a boomerang is? You throw it out, and it comes back to you. Statistically, they're called boomerang. Some demographers actually have a category called boomerang generation. Because that's where the 3 million people are going. Remember when I asked you before, where are they all going? Where are they living? Guess what? They're doubling up. They're tripling up. You know how many converted garages there are in the United States that nobody knows about because they're illegal? And here's the other problem about generational housing. A lot of times they don't fit on the normal lot design because they're big. I mean, a lot of the generational housing, actually, some have two kitchens. Some have two entrance doors. You actually can live in half your house and not even, maybe there's one door connecting you to your mother's side or something. The city's saying, no. Dad, you're just tricking us. We want 2 lots here because we make more tax revenues when there's 2 lots than there are if there's one big house. So so they fight. They fight the land design. And there's some cities and towns who will not approve multi-generation housing because they don't have laws on their books that allow it. But all in all, it is one of the safety nets to the problem. But I don't know how sustainable it is. How long are people going to, if we were a bunch of immigrants, maybe there are some here, and I'm not being negative on immigrants, but if we were a bunch of million immigrants who just all got off boats, we would have no problem just because this is the only way we lived anyway, where we came from. But as the American dream got embedded in the minds of people of having my own place, my own life accomplishment, to go off of that and go back to something that would be perceived not quite as good as that, I think has problems. I mean, I think it'll solve some problems.
I don't see it as a necessarily it being a family issue. Like I mean, if I was to buy a first home and I didn't have the money, I could go into one of those and have the other ones a source of income, extra income.
Then it's a 2-family house, and now you're totally out of the zoning.
Yeah, but you don't have to. There are no requirements for you to whom you rent or who lives next to you.
If you, in most parts of the United States, if you have a definitive wall inside a house that separates 2 different sets of people legally, you have a 2-story house. 2-family house, I mean, it's not allowed.
But the bylaws, if you read the bylaws, because I was into
Unless the
city,
city,
it doesn't tell you. I mean, you can put a lock on that door and rent it.
they'll find out. Someone will turn you in,
Really?
believe me. Somebody will turn you in. Somebody will call the city and go, do you know what they're doing in that house?
Yes. Very, very good discussion. I really like your talk about the GI Bill and the history. My grandfather fought in World War II, but couldn't take advantage of those interest rates because banks wouldn't loan to him because he was African American, and certain neighborhoods wouldn't allow my family to move into. Then when you gave that example of Levittown, wow, imagine if we had been able to take advantage of that and have $750,000 in equity. It's just kind of devastating. But in all of your work for ULI, do you see a redevelopment project in the United United States that's really addressing most of the major issues we're facing. Traffic, affordability, things like that. Is there anything we should look at?
Oh, sure, a lot of communities. I mentioned one up here, real quick, it's called Stapleton. Stapleton is inside Denver. It used to be the Stapleton Airport. It was Denver's airport. And because it's so close to downtown and in the middle of residential, they decided to take the airport and go way out in the boonies, like 18 miles from downtown Denver, 20 miles, and build this humongous airport, which has a story of its own. It was so corrupt and all. Anyway, so today, if you go to Denver and you want to and you land, you've got to take like a $60 taxi ride into downtown because so they had this airport, but I think it was like 6,000 or 7,000 acres, and they put it out to the industry, to the real estate industry, and they said, we want to be partners. We want to have a public-private partnership. We own the land, and we will carve out the land to a developer if we all agree on the plan, and the developer doesn't have to carry the land on his books. We'll carry the land until the developer needs it and will have a value and so forth. Many companies, many development companies bid on it, and one company won the whole thing. It was called Forest City Enterprises. They're based in Cleveland, but they develop all over the world. They agreed on a new urbanism type of land plan with a lot of walkability, limitation on cars, an internal transportation system of jitneys and small buses, a bus system into downtown Denver. It's right on an interstate, and they have mixed retail with residential. There's a lot of multifamily, but there's a lot of high-density single-family, and they're about halfway developed now. There must be 8,000 to 9,000 housing units built already, and a lot of retail, a lot of restaurants and so forth. And they just keep walking across the property, piece by piece. The whole project may take 30 years, but they have many of the sustainability concepts built into their plan. Now they've added a lot of LEEDs and green buildings and things like that to their criteria. But that's just one. There are a bunch of them. There are more and more. In fact, you almost have to do that now, if you have a large piece of property. The problem with a large piece of property today is somebody calls me as a consultant and says to me, I hear you're an advisor and an expert on visioning large developments and so forth. And if someone says to me, I have 5,000 acres of land, and I want to start visioning, I tell them immediately, stop. You don't own 5,000 acres of land. You're not going to tell the world you own 5,000 acres of land. We're going to just tell them you own 800 acres. We don't even want to have the word thousand attached to anything. Because you're not going to develop the whole 5,000 acres at once. You're going to carve it out into phases. And we're only going to tell them about the first phase, which is, let's say, it's 800 acres. We're going to do a nice land plan. We're going to fill all. We're doing a great job. We're going to do it. And if you do a great job with that 800 acres, they're going to let you develop the next 4,000 acres with no problem at all. But your big problem would be is getting 5,000 acres approved at once. They will tie you up in an approval process for years in almost any place in the United States, except Houston. Houston has no land planning laws. You can build anything you want, almost anywhere you want. Right, Professor?
Absolutely.
But any other place in the United States. So, but to answer your question, yes, we get it. We have fixed all those things that we inadvertently did after World War II for the next 50 years. We learned from that. We said, gee, this didn't all work. And oh, by the way, a lot of that bad planning, which we call the first ring of suburbia, that's what planners call it. That's the stuff that we built after World War II. That is where all the redevelopment is going on. The first things we built years ago are the first things coming down and being redeveloped. Why? They're the closest to the urban core. They have pipe in the ground. They have streets, they have infrastructure. They have all that there. It's just now a matter of increasing the density and modernizing the whole thing and making it sustainable. So if you're looking for where are the redevelopment opportunities, they're in the first ring of suburbia. What's the first ring of suburbia? If you know Broward County, would be the western side of the city of Hollywood. Would be a great example. State Road 7, 441, that whole area, that was the first ring of suburbia in South Florida. When we came off of the ocean cities, when we came off of Fort Lauderdale and Hollywood and Pompano Beach and everything, we started going west. That all happened after World War II. Before the war, I don't think any town went more than a half a mile or the most a mile from the ocean. So then we went further. Then the next ring is the westerns of the world and all those planned communities out on the other side of I-75. So there are definitive lines of where the redevelopment is most likely going to take place. And we will do those good, sensible development concepts. And I'm sorry, about what happened to your grandparents. But it's
Well,
terrible.
it's just, that's
Yeah,
what's
I mean,
indicative for African American
You think
community.
back. It's horrible.
So do you consult for Detroit?
They what?
Are you a consultant for Detroit? And
Detroit?
all that's, yeah, all that's happening there.
Go ahead.
That's like the hotbed of development. You're a consultant for.
Detroit is obviously a huge problem.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything personally. I've sat on ULI panels, visualizing, trying to come up with something. It's unfortunately embedded with some of the worst labor structures in the country. The pain is going to be incredible. It is already. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people that are going to lose their pensions permanently, lose their medical. But there are a few people there now trying to really light the fire. There's been some good redevelopment downtown. But their first ring is horrific. Horrific. So there, you're probably going to have to knock down 75% of it. But will the capital markets do it? The problem. You're going to have to demonstrate a willingness to make big sacrifices.
There are French investors there now.
So they did it in Pittsburgh. Now Cleveland is coming alive. Pittsburgh's the greatest example, best example of going from really bad situation to Pittsburgh's a fabulous city. I mean, we wouldn't think of that, but culturally, everything, jobs, high tech, some of the best biochemical, biohealth facilities in the United States are Pittsburgh. So, any other questions? Am I over? Oh, I'm finished.
Great, thank you very
Thank you very much.
All right, we are going to begin precisely at 1 p.m., so make sure that you're back. Harry Closens will be coming in, so make sure you're here precisely at 1.
Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Good luck.
Okay. I understand. Hi, I'm Fred Forty. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, sir. So, yeah, today we've got a number of our advisory board members that are guest lecturing.
Oh, hi, I'm Tony Troll. good.
Oh, okay, good.
I don't know, no, I didn't, no, we didn't.
But, so you sat in for like the last, I guess, 2 hours or hour or so? Okay, all right. And then after lunch, one of our other advisors, yeah, I'll see you over there in a few minutes.
Are you gonna go over there?
Yeah. But another one of our advisory board members, Gary Posey, and at 1 o'clock, I'm listening for that. And we have another one, Jessica Jolie from Styles Corporation, is coming in for retail. Yeah, I'm the instructor. This is, we've kind of finished all of our traditional material. Now we're sort of doing guest speakers and site visits next week. This is normal real estate development course. So we've done all of the traditional kind of textbook test. That's what now we're doing the application side. Right, of this term.
Okay.
Have you been talking to Matt Rothstein? Yes. Okay, good. Well, if you do come up with any, no, I don't. Well, yeah, I may have some cards. Let me.